going to start this morning by talking about a free online game.
In my hand is a pen that will write a poem of me and you.
Things do turn sinister.
The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand
With characters
right
self-harming
away into
and
the
killing
sky.
themselves.
But in this world of infinite choices,
An inquest will be held into the death of a 15-year-old.
What will it take just to find that special day?
Let me take you back to 2017, a time where the horror game industry thrived, with releases such as Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, Outlast 2, Alison Root, Agony, and Friday the 13th the game was released. However, one of the most popular ones in 2017, in fact probably the most popular one, was Doki Doki Literature Club, a freeware visual novel developed by American independent game studio Team Salvato. The game was initially distributed through itch.io and later became available on Steam. The story is told from the perspective of a high school student who reluctantly joins the school's literature club on the insistence of his childhood best friend, named Sayori, and is given the option to romantically pursue 3 of its 4 female members, either Sayori, Natsuki, or Yuri. It has a non-traditional plot structure with multiple endings and unlockable cutscenes for each character. Although the game initially appears to be a light-hearted dating simulator, it is in fact a psychological horror game that excessively breaks the fourth wall and even deletes files from the game. Now, you're about to see some graphic content and some spoilers up ahead, so skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid that. And as time goes on in the game, 3 of the 4 club members are brutally picked off one by one. And with each act, the characters start to develop very odd behaviours that are very out of character for them. And after each 3 of the club members are killed off, it turns out the president of the literary club, named Monica, has been the one responsible for the deaths of the fellow club members. The only way to defeat her is by going into the game files and deleting her yourself. She then brings back the other girls, and power is transmitted to Sayuri, as she is the vice president, and now Monica's gone, she is now the president, and now gains awareness that she is also in a game. On the 22nd of September 2017, Doki Doki Literature Club was released on Steam and on the official website. In just 4 months, the game had received roughly 2 million downloads. Things were going well, until in February 2018, 15-year-old Ben Wemsley was found dead after committing suicide. How he committed suicide is unknown. And in June in the same year, his death was linked to his obsession with the game. The Manchester Coroner's Office was quoted saying, "I believe the information is so concerning that this warrants my writing at this stage to make local authority aware of the issue so appropriate information can be disseminated." This has arisen due to the fact that I'm conducting the inquest into the death of a 15-year-old boy who died earlier this year. Evidence obtained suggests that he used an online game called Doki Doki. The game becomes an easy target of suspicion simply based on its nature alone. Upon starting the game, users are met with several warnings. One such warning appears on the main page of the website. This game is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. The visual novel takes players through many twists, turns and jump scares at some points. The player even loses control of the story and the game becomes sentient, purposely glitching out and directing the player to game files outside the world of Doki Doki Literature Club. Ben Wamsley's father, Darren Wamsley, also had this to say about the game. The characters suggest things and you decide what to do. It drags you in and they make it very real. Ben did not speak about it, but parents need to be aware of this game and other similar games. It is free to download, but once you get into it, it will never leave you alone. The characters befriend and love you and give you tasks to do, but if you don't do them, they turn nasty. Okay, I'm just going to point something out really quick that's inaccurate about what he said. The characters suggest things and you decide what to do. Well, technically Monica is the one who calls the shots considering she's the president, but that's probably me just nitpicking. The characters befriend and love you and give you tasks to do, but if you don't do them, they turn nasty. I think in the first part of that, he means the poem minigame where you have to write out the poem. You can't do anything else until you complete that bit. And also for the second bit, I think this is either referring to the argument Natsuki and Yuri have in Act 2, or when you're forced to pick Monica against your will also in Act 2. In Natsuki and Yuri's argument, they're talking to each other and trying to get the player to side with them. And the part where you're forced to choose Monica to spend the weekend with against your will in Act 2, Natsuki and Yuri start to complain to Monica, even going as far to say that she gives the other club members all the tasks and then takes the player for her own. Remember, they're not talking to the actual player. Again, they're just complaining to Monica. It is free to download, but once you get into it, it will never leave you alone. Jesus Christ, mate, you're acting like this game sends you messages at What the f***? And on the 28th of June, 2018, the BBC made a report on the game. But who are the BBC? Well, as a citizen of the country that the BBC serves, I should probably tell you who they are. The British Broadcasting Corporation, or better known as the BBC, is the national broadcaster for the United Kingdom, based at Broadcasting House in London. It is the world's oldest national broadcaster and the largest broadcaster in the world by number of employees, employing over 20,000 staff in total, of whom approximately 19,000 are in public sector broadcasting. The BBC is established under a royal charter and operates under its agreement with the Secretary of State for Digital, Cultural, Media and Sport. Its work is funded by an annual television licence fee, which is charged to all British households, companies and organisations using any type of equipment to receive or record live television broadcasts and iPlayer catch-up. The fee is set by the British government, agreed by Parliament, and is used to fund the BBC's radio, TV and online services covering the nation and regions of the UK. Around a quarter of the BBC's revenue comes from its commercial subsidiary BBC Studios, formerly known as BBC Worldwide, which sells BBC programmes and services internationally and also distributes the BBC's international 24-hour English language news service, BBC News. BBC News is an operational business division of the British Broadcasting Corporation, responsible for the gathering and broadcasting of news and current affairs in the UK and around the world. The department is the world's largest broadcast news organisation and generates about 120 hours of radio and television output each day, as well as online news coverage. The service maintains 50 foreign news bearers with more than 250 correspondents around the world. And today we're going to look on their news report on DDLC and find out whether this is a risk to children or just another overreaction by mainstream media. Probably the latter. Okay, so now I'm going to watch the report from start to finish and just point out any inaccuracies or anything I just completely disagree with. So, here we go. Let's take a look.
Good morning. We're going to start this morning by talking about a free online game after police and a coroner have warned about the risks of it to children. It's called Doki Doki Literature Club, and it starts like a dating game set in a high school and features a group of animated girls in a book club.
Okay, first off, maybe you should get everyone to switch off their damn phones. And second, technically it's not a book club, it's a literature club, but that's just me nitpicking.
Things do turn sinister, with characters self-harming and killing themselves. It's said to be suitable for players aged 13 or over. It was launched last year and was downloaded 2 million times in the first 4 months. An inquest will be held into the death of a 15-year-old called Ben Wormsley from Bury, whose father said the game dragged his son in. And a pre-inquest review is due to take place at 10 o'clock this morning in that case. Greater Manchester Police have said, "We believe this game is a risk to children."
Wow, really professional look you've got, BBC. Not even your editors can't even put in simple text properly.
And young people, especially those that are emotionally vulnerable.
And the reporter you chose can't even get a frickin' words out.
And anyone with existing mental health concerns. The coroner has warned this is a psychological horror game with suicide as a main feature. And notes too, it does warn it's not suitable for children. However, the graphics, etc., are clearly aimed at young people.
What?
However, the graphics, etc., are clearly aimed at young people. Clearly aimed at young people.
Clearly aimed at young people.
Okay, it's clear now that they did not invest that much research into this before reporting on it. Just because it's animated, that does not mean it's for kids. Like, animation, despite what type of animation it is, it doesn't necessarily mean it's aimed for kids. I can think of a few animated shows that are definitely not for kids. Family Guy, King of the Hill, American Dad, Beavis and Butthead, Robot Chicken. Well, that's stop motion, but still, it technically is animation. I could go on, but if I did, I'd probably be here for a while. Also, in Japan, anime can be anything. It could be its own thing. It could be its own genre. It could be for any age, really. I mean, I've seen a few of them to know what I'm on about. Also, how many damn warnings do you need in the game? Let me list them off. There's one on the website. There's 2 in the game itself, on the Steam description, and there's another one coming up. Let's just continue watching. And let me tell you, it does not help the BBC's case.
We've contacted the game's creators, Team Salvato, but so far we haven't heard back. Here's the trailer for the game with that warning right at the start.
Okay. Just ask me. Can someone riddle me this, right? As a news station, in this type of situation, why the would you do this? Why would you go on to say all this and then show the trailer that has the warning right at the start? What? It baffles me. It honestly baffles me. You go on to say, oh, this game's dangerous to kids and stuff, and then you show a trailer which tells the person watching it that it's not for kids or anyone who's easily disturbed. It kind of just throws your argument out the window, doesn't it? Oh, boy. At this point, I feel like I need to apologise on the behalf of the BBC for embarrassing our entire nation with their incompetence. I don't think I'll be able to recover from this. And honestly, it worries me to think where our TV licence actually goes to.
Let's talk about this now with the news editor for the video game website Kotaku UK, Laura Dale. Also mum of 2 and casual gamer, Helen Grounds. She has played Doki Doki and is a fan. And Lorna Fraser is here from the suicide prevention charity Samaritans. Welcome all of you. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Laura, describe the premise.
So the basic premise of the game is that it starts off like a dating sim, as you'd said, that you go to this literature club, try and make friends with all these different girls, and it sort of subverts the expectations of that genre by becoming a horror narrative. A little bit of spoilers for the game. One of the characters, as it turns out, is not happy that you're dating the other video game characters, and she manipulates events so that other characters will commit suicide and will sort of drive you towards dating her instead.
And what's your reaction to this warning from the coroner and Greater Manchester Police about the risks to children and those who are vulnerable?
I think that, honestly, it's the same as the risks of any piece of media that deals with these kind of themes, be it video games or movies or books. If you have someone who is already in an emotionally vulnerable state and you have them engaging with media that tackles these difficult themes and they don't have an outlet to talk about that properly.
Exactly, and this is where Ben Walmsley's father went wrong. The reason he may have not spoke about it was because he didn't have that place to, like, you know, just let it all out, just vent out, let it all out and just talk. Now, in terms of, like, you know, like mental well-being and all that, I'm probably not the person to talk about it. But, you know, like, just ask how they are, just, and like, what they like to do and what they do in the pastime. Well, maybe you should know that already, but you get my point. Like, hell, what games they play or something like that. Like, just asking that or just mentioning it can make it easier for them to talk to you and easy for you to talk to them. I may not be an expert on this, but I just want to chime into it and give my own opinion on it.
That can be a problem. I think that a lot of it does just come down to communication and making sure that if you've got a child who is already struggling with those themes, that you're aware of what kind of media they're engaging with.
Helen, you've got 2 children, younger children. This game is said to be suitable for 13 and up, and that's because it asks you to tick if you are 13 and up, which of course any age could do. Despite the warning, do you think it is deliberately designed to look attractive to kids?
Well, firstly, it is a dating game. These aren't kids' games. It may...
Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, what kind of dating sim is for kids?
Some people kind of get the idea that this kind of anime style is kiddie because it looks cartoony, but in Japan, anime can be for anyone, and it is over in the US and in the UK. And this type of game isn't a type of game for children. I would probably not say 13.
Even that's too young?
I would say it's quite questionable, considering the sort of things that is it. But it does, playing the game, when you actually start it up, there is a ginormous text that says the game is not suitable for children. If you are easily disturbed, you should not play this. It really does try and tell you, don't play this if you're under a certain age or if you are easily disturbed. And as someone who's also does suffer from mental health problems, you know, I was thinking, ooh, should I actually play this? But I did. And it didn't affect me. If anything, some of the things that did come up kind of helped me realise that if a person sort of acts a certain way, that maybe they really do need help.
Right. And how do you react to this warning from the coroner and from Greater Manchester Police? And this is what GMP say. We believe the game is a risk to children and young people, especially those that are emotionally vulnerable and anyone with existing mental health concerns. I would ask parents to check the sites their children are using on a regular basis, as websites like this aren't flagged up by normal firewall settings.
No, they're not. Because that's not what the firewall is. The firewall is a network security system that monitors and controls incoming and outgoing network traffic based on predetermined security rules. A firewall typically establishes a barrier between a trusted network and an untrusted network, i.e. the internet. It does not apply to games. Also, if the game did have malware, Steam wouldn't allow it to be on their site, would it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Parents really need to know what their child is doing on the online.
That's what they should have been doing in the first place.
I mean, I won't let my child go on my laptop on his own. He's only allowed to access certain things, and I sit with him.
And how old is he?
My oldest is 8 years old. He's only allowed to play a maths game called Hit the Button, which is used in quite a lot of schools anyway. The only other time he can access the internet is actually in school, which again, there's always a teacher there watching over the children when they're doing their IT. And I will sit with him. If he wants to do some homework, we'll go on Wikipedia together and we research things together. We read it together.
You've said that, you've said that you think 13 is potentially too young. What would be a suitable age?
Considering the things, I mean, it's a difficult thing because the issue is free games like Doki Doki and Five Nights at Freddy's, they don't come under any kind of age rating like video games that you buy in a game shop.
Well, here's the thing. The creators of the game, Team Salvato, are, you know, a US. So, and the US and the UK have a different game age rating system. For those of you who don't know, in the UK it's 3, 7, then 12, then 15, then 18. For the US, I believe it's EC, E, then E10 plus, then T, then M, then A. I'm not too sure, correct me if I'm wrong.
So you can easily download them for free and they don't have to go through the whole stringency of going for a certain rating like we have in the UK. To be honest, I would say 18, considering there is quite some graphical parts in it. It is quite upsetting.
Well, I mean, let's be clear. When you play the game, do you see characters kill themselves, sometimes in quite graphic situations?
One of them especially, yes.
I believe she's referring to Yuri's death, because in the game you do see the whole thing happen. I mean, in my first playthrough of the game, I was certainly taken aback by it.
Right. Lorna Fraser from Samaritans, how do you respond to that?
Well, what we believe is that this is an example of where it's really important for parents to be aware of the things that they do online. Just as you would want to protect your child in the offline environment, if your kids are going out, you'd like to know where they're going, who they're hanging out with, how they're getting home, this kind of thing. We would encourage parents to have these conversations with your kids, be aware of what they do online. You know, it could give you a false sense of security because they're tucked away in their bedroom or on their tablet or computer, you know, playing something, but they're safe at home. But just be aware that there are dangers. But it's also important to avoid any confusion around focusing on one particular game because there will be others. So we don't want to give the message to parents, firstly, to really alarm parents.
Really? I mean, this report seems like it wants to do that.
Because there are lots of good things online too, but not to give the message to parents that if your child isn't playing this particular game, then there's no cause for concern.
Yeah.
You know, there are others.
Laura, you're nodding your head in agreement.
Definitely. There are certain parts of what have been said about this particular game that do lead me to suspect that it may not have been the only game involved in this particular tragic event. Without knowing specifically...
We'll have to wait for the inquest, so
we'd have to
speculate.
obviously wait for the inquest, but there were statements made about this game by the father that are not things that are featured in this game, which would suggest that perhaps there were other games being engaged with that aren't the focus of this inquest. So obviously, this is one game perhaps to look at and say, should your child be playing this? But also be aware of what else they're playing, because there might be other potential risk factors available.
The game itself warns that it's not suitable for children. Mm-hmm. Helen, as a mum of two, one being 8, says, actually, I think 13 is too young. I mean, if you see, in quite graphic situations, a character kill themselves, would you agree 18 would seem more appropriate?
The games like this, as Helen mentioned, aren't rated by any of the ratings boards in the UK. Most of the UK ratings boards would likely rate this at least a 15 or an 18 because it contains scenes of graphic violence relating to suicide.
Sorry to interrupt,
yes.
so my question is, as a parent, if you're across all the stuff that your kid's playing on tablets and laptops and phones, you might see the beginning of this, which says this game is not suitable for children. If that was me, I'd think, OK, so my teenager, my 14, 15 in a year's time teenager, is all right playing this. And actually, if you played the game yourself as an adult, you might get to the end and think, this is not suitable for a 14, 15, 16-year-old.
I certainly think that there are people who would see that warning that says, you know, you should be over 13 and would say, oh,
there is not a warning that says you should be over 13, is there? Let's be clear. It says is this game is not suitable for children.
I can literally solve this argument with one screenshot. There you go.
And you're supposed to tick the box if you are over 13.
Yes, well, my point being, if there is a tick box that says, are you over 13, I can understand why parents would go, my child is 14, 15, 16, is probably fine with it. And I think there is definitely a concern to be made for, parents not paying attention to what their children are engaging with just because there's an age box that was ticked first.
But I'm being realistic as a parent.
Yeah.
You know, I might see it says 13, tick that box. I'd see the warning at the beginning, and then I would think, OK, it's fine for my teenager.
I'm not saying that as a criticism of parents.
Yeah.
I understand where that difficulty is for parents.
I mean, yeah, every kid is different. I mean, sometimes you have someone who doesn't have any mental problems and might get affected by it. Sometimes you'll have a kid with mental problems that probably won't get affected as much. I mean, I'm of almost full mental capacity, and I didn't really get affected by that. If anything, it kind of helped me to figure out how to, like, spot whether someone does have mental problems or not. But then again, shouldn't the parent know their kid best? Like, like if they see that warning and say, and consider, like, how they are in terms of mental state, and how sensitive they are to, like, anything horror related, surely the parent can use some of their own judgment to determine whether they'll be okay playing the game. If anyone does happen to have kids and is watching this, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids. I'm just offering my own opinion on it.
Yeah, I understand that difficulty.
Lorna, the NSPCC tell us the game creators itself warn that it's not suitable for children.
And there's the phone going off again.
And those that are easily disturbed. Parents should be aware that the game contains highly sensitive and adult themes, such as suicide. It's important for parents to have regular conversations with children about their online lives that are as normal as asking about their day at school. What would your advice be to parents who are watching now who might be concerned about this?
To do exactly that. Get to know what your kids are doing online. You know, make this part of everyday conversations so that it's not, it doesn't feel like you're prying into their private lives or doing anything like this. And also making mental health, emotional health part of everyday conversations. You know, these are things that families need to be talking about because it helps to keep people safe.
Okay. Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much.
Overall, what did I think of the DDLC versus BBC debate? Well, it definitely hasn't affected DDLC's popularity, that's for sure, as the fandom is somewhat still alive, with dozens of mods, members of said community, and people are still making artwork, along with much more. As for the BBC, seriously, this is not one of your crowning moments. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It's probably one of the poorest researched reports I have ever seen. It's clear that there was not much research put into this, and it was the whole blame the video game bandwagon. It always is. But somehow it's always the video games. It's never the violent rap music he listens to, or the graphic TV shows he watches. It's always the games. And I know some people might say, "Oh, but games are different, guy. You're being involved in video games, unlike TV and music." To that I say, F*** off. I've been playing DDLC for a few months now, but I've never found the urge to go join a book club. Like 20 years ago, games were just seen as something that kept you occupied. It gave you some fun in your life. But now, it seems that the world hates it, to the point where they over-exaggerate what the game's about, just so it can be their scapegoat. If anything, it's just a way to divert the blame off the parents and onto something or someone else. And they just choose the option that's the easiest. I don't know whether Dan Salvato actually did contact BBC back, but I wouldn't be bothered if he didn't, because he does not need to give any explanation. And again, I'm not trying to say that Ben Walmsley's father was a bad father, because I bet he was amazing. Also, I'm not trying to discredit the horrible aftermath of what happened to them. Should I discredit that someone killed themselves? Absolutely not. But is it 100% the game's fault? Also, absolutely not. Simply put, I just think that parents and news stations just need to relax with their accusations on games. And if they do think for some reason the game's going to be like harmful to kids, for God's sake, at least research it properly before you go off making a massive report on it. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this look into this debate. This is probably going to be the only documentary video I ever make unless I come along something particularly interesting. But after I upload this, I'll go back to my normal voice acting videos as always. And I could be collaborating with someone very soon. I'll tell you if that happens. But in the meantime, goodbye for now. Just Guy.
Time to write some poems, don't be scared to show them. The festival stays away. You can help with baking or with banner making, and I'll walk home alone today. Maybe we're friends, maybe we're more. How can he love a simple girl next door? I'm just not the type he's looking for. Hey, Sayori, you doing okay? I'm having a difficult day. I'd say you seem pretty lonely.
I wish I could make her grin. All she wants are things back the way they've been.
She's depressed and stressed and she's feeling blue, so I don't want Sayori hanging around you. Just Monica, just Monica, just Monica.